הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה, הנה, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים. אוי 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 שבת אחים, שבת אחים גם יחד. שבת אחים, אוי אחים גם yachad. Good morning, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for being here this morning. We have two parallel minyanim happening this morning, as you may know. You can be here with me in the Beit Tefillah, and we also this morning are trialing what we're calling our new hybridity. We're trying this hybrid in-person online service. It's a kolot-style service that's happening outside in our Eilith Sukkah as well as online. So please do, if you are kind of bouncing back and forth between services, do let us know what your experience is of these services. Rabbi Hannah will be coming into the Beit Tefillah midway through this service and taking over from there. In the meantime, we will begin this morning with Ma Tovu on page 160. Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkanotecha Yisrael, Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkanotecha Yisrael, Vani berov chasecha, avo vetecha, Eshtacha velecha l'kodshecha, be'yiratecha, Adonai ahavti, me'on beitecha, u'mikom mishkan kevodecha, mishkan kevodecha, va'ani eshtachaveh, ve'echra, evrecha lifnei Adonai, osi, ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael, ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael, vani tefilati lecha, Adonai et ratzon, Elohim berov chastecha, Elohim berov chastecha, aneni be'emet yishecha, ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael. We'll continue on page 162 with the prayer for our bodies. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar et ha'adam b'chokhmah, uvaravo nekavim nekavim, chalulim chalulim, galui v'yadua lifnei chisei chevodecha, she'im yipateach echad mehem, o yisatem echad mehem, אי אפשר להתקיים ולעמוד לפניך. ברוך אתה אדוני, רופא כל בשר, ומפליא לעשות. And the prayer for our souls on the top of page 163. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. 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 Ata verata, ata yitzarta, ata nefachta bi, ve'ata meshamra b'kirbi. Ve'ata atid litla mimeni l'chayei olam. Kol zman shehaneshama b'kirbi. Moda ani lefanecha, Adonai Elohai ve'Elohei avotai, she'ata hu ribon kol hama'asim, moshel v'chol habriot, Adon kol haneshamot. Baruch ata Adonai, hamachazir neshamot lametim. We're on page 164. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, she'asani b'tselem Elohim. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, shelo asani nochriya. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, shelo asani shivcha. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, she'asa li kol tzorki. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, bokeach ivrim. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, malbish arumim. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, matir asurim. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, zokef kefufim. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, hamechin mitzadik aver. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, ozer Yisrael bigvura. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, oter Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, hanoten layaif koach. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, hamavir sheina me'enai, utnuma me'afapai. Leolam yehei adam yirei shamayim beseter kavagalui, umodeh al ha'emet, udover emet bilvavo. We will continue on page 171. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch, leolam vaed. V'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu yihyeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Hoshienu Adonai Eloheinu, lehodot l'shem kodshecha, lehishtabeach b'tehilatecha. Hoshienu Adonai Eloheinu, lehodot l'shem kodshecha, lehishtabeach b'tehilatecha. Baruch Adonai Elohei Yisrael, min ha'olam va'ad ha'olam, va'amar kol ha'am, amen. Hallelujah, hallelujah, kol hanshama tehallel, hallelujah. Baruch she'amar v'haya ha'olam, Baruch hu. Baruch omer ve'oseh, Baruch gozer u'mekayem. Baruch oseh v'reshit, Baruch merachem al haaretz. Baruch merachem al habriot. Baruch mishalem sachar tov lireav. Baruch ma'avir afela u'mevi ora. Baruch el chai la'ad v'kayam lanetzach. Baruch she'en lefanav avla, v'lo shicha v'lo masof anim, v'lo mikach shochad. Tzadik hu b'chol derachav, v'chasid b'chol ma'asav. Baruch podeh u'matzil, Baruch hamanchil menucha le'amo Yisrael b'yom Shabbat Kodesh. Baruch hu v'baruch shemo, u'baruch zichro le'ol me'ad. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, hamelech hagadol v'hakadosh av harachaman, mehulal befi amo, meshubach u'mefo'ar b'yelshon kol chasidav ve'avadav, u'v'shirei David avdecha, nehalelcha Adonai Eloheinu, b'yishvachot u'v'izmirot, nehodcha, negadelcha, nefa'ercha, v'namlichecha v'naskir shimcha, malkeinu Eloheinu, yachid chei ha'olamim, Meshubach u'mefo'ar shemo adei ad. Baruch atah Adonai, melech mehulal batishbachot. Page 176, a psalm for the Shabbat day. Tov lehodot l'Adonai, u'lezamer l'shimcha elyon, Lehagid baboker chasdecha, ve'emunatecha balelot, ale asur v'ale navel, ale higayon bechinor, Ki simchtani Adonai b'fo'alecha, b'maseh yadecha aranen. Ma gadlu ma'asecha Adonai, me'or amku makshavotecha, ish ba'ar lo yeda, uchsil lo yavin et zot. Bifroach risha'im kemo esev, V'yatzitzu kol po'alei aven, lehisham dam adei ad. V'yatam marom leolam Adonai. Ki hine oivecha Adonai, ki hine oivecha yovedu. Yitpardu kol po'alei aven. V'tarem kir'em karni beloti b'shemen ra'anan. V'tabet eni b'shurai. V'kamim alai mireim tishmana oznai. Tzadikata yifrach ke'erez balvanon yiskei shetulim beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenuvun beseva deshenim verananim lehagid ki ashar Adonai suri velo avlatabo. We'll turn to page 199. Baruch Adonai leolam, amen ve'amen. Baruch Adonai Elohim, Elohei Yisrael, oseh niflaot levado, uvaruch shem kevodo leolam, ve'yimelech kevodo et kol haaretz, amen ve'amen. Nishmat kol chai, tivarech et shimcha, Adonai Eloheinu, teruach kol basar, tifaeru dromem, zichrecha malkeinu tamid, min haolam ve'ad haolam, ata el. Umibaladecha ein lanu melech goel u'moshia, podeh u'matzil, ve'oneh u'merachem. Bechol et tzara v'tzuka ein lanu melech ozer v'somech zulatecha. Elohei harishonim v'ha'acharonim, Eloah kol briot, Adon kol toladot, hamehulal bechol hatishbachot, hamenaheg olamo bechesed u'v'riotav berachamim, va'Adonai lo yanum v'lo yishan, hame'orer yeshenim v'hamekitz nirdanim, mechaye metim v'rofeh cholim, hokeach ivrim v'zokef kefufim, lecha levadcha anachnu modim. We will sing our way in and out of the next section of Psukei de Zimra, allowing some time in the middle for silent prayer and reflection. Ve'ilu filu male shira, shira chayam, u'shonenu rina kamon galav. Ve'ilu filu male shira, shira chayam, u'shonenu rina kamon galav. We will continue in the middle of page 203. Shochen ad marom v'kadosh shemo, v'chatuv ranonu tzadikim b'Adonai, la'yesharim nava tehila, b'fi yesharim titramam, uv'divrei tzadikim titbarach, uv'ilshon chasidim titkadash, uv'bekarev kadoshim tithalal. Please stand if you're comfortable. Yishtabach shimcha la'ad malkeinu, ha'el ha'melech ha'gadol v'ha'kadosh b'shamayim u'ba'aretz, ki lecha na'eh Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu le'olam va'ed. Shir u'shvacha, kedusha u'malchut, berachot ve'hodaot, l'shimcha ha'gadol ve'ha'kadosh, u'me'olam ve'ad olam atah, baruch atah Adonai, borei chol ha'neshamot, ribon kol ha'maasim, ha'bocher b'shirei zimra, melechei ha'olamim. Baruch Please be seated. We're on the top of page 207. Blessed are you, our living God, sovereign of the universe, who forms light yet creates darkness, who makes peace yet creates all. All things proclaim you, all things honor you, and all say, none is holy like God. The one who gives light to all the world and those who live in it, renews in goodness the work of creation day by day. God, how great are your works! You made them all in wisdom. The earth is full of your creatures. You are the only sovereign exalted from the beginning of time, who has been worshipped, praised, and glorified since days of old. Everlasting God, in your great mercy, have mercy upon us. Source of our strength, rock of our protection, shield of our safety, our true protector. Cause a new light to shine upon Zion, and may we all be worthy soon to enjoy its brightness. Blessed are you, God, who creates the lights of the universe. With deep love you have loved us, and with great and overflowing tenderness you have taken pity on us. Source of our life and our sovereign, show us compassion because of your own greatness, and because of our ancestors who trusted in you. For you taught them rules to live by, to do your will with their whole heart. That our eyes see the light of your teaching, and our hearts embrace your commands. Give us integrity to love you and fear you. So shall we never lose our self-respect, nor be put to shame, for you are the power which works to save us. You chose us from all peoples and tongues, and in love drew us near to your own greatness, to honor you, to declare your unity, and to love you. Blessed are you, God, who chooses your people Israel in love. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher be'amo Yisrael, be'ahava. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, bechol levavcha uvechol nafshecha uvechol meodecha. Ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele, asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha. Ve'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam. V'shivtecha b'veitecha, uvlektecha v'derech, uvshochbecha uvkumecha. Ukshartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot bein einecha. Uktavtam al mezuzot beitecha, uvisha'arecha. We will continue in silence with our own prayers and meditations and join back together on the top of page 216. Vayomer Adonai al Moshe lemor, daber el bnei Yisrael ve'amarta alehem, ve'asu lahem tzitzit, al kanfei vigdeihem ledorotam, ve'natenu al tzitzit hakanaf petil techelet, ve'haya lachem letzitzit uritem oto uzachartem et kol mitzvot Adonai vasitem otam velo taturu acharei levavchem ve'acharei einechem asher atem zonim achareihem Leman tizkeru, vasitem et kol mitzvotai, vehitem kedoshim lelohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אמת ויציב וקיים ומקובל וטוב הדבר הזה עלינו לעולם ועד. אמת אלוהי עולם מלכנו, צור יעקב מגן ישנו, לדור ודור הוא קיים, ומלכותו באמונתו לעד קיימת. אמת שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, פודנו ומצילנו מעולם הוא שמך, אין אלוהים זולתך. עזרת אבותינו אתה הוא מעולם, מגן ומושיע להם, ולבניהם אחריהם בכל דור ודור. אשרי איש שישמע למצוותיך, ותורתך ודברך ישים על ליבו. אמת אתה הוא ראשון ואתה הוא אחרון, ומבלעדיך אין לנו מלך גואל ומושיע. ממצרים גאלתנו אדוני אלוהינו, ומבית עבדים פדיתנו. משה ומרים ובני ישראל, לך ענו שירה, בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא, נורא תהילות עושה פלא. שירה חדשה שבחו גאולים, לשמך על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו, והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, כה עלינו אדוני, צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני, גל ישראל, גל ישראל, Israel. As we turn to page 222 for our Shabbat Amidah, we will begin together chanting the Amidah, and then there will be an opportunity in the middle of our Amidah for some silent prayer and meditation. We'll begin together on page 222. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agid tehilatecha. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agid tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'Elohei imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Konei Hakol, V'zocher chasrei avot v'imahot, u'mevi goel livnei v'neihem, leman shemo be'ahava. Melech ozer u'moshiach u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Poked Sarah. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechaye metim atah Rav lehoshia, Morid hatal. Mechakel chayim bechesed, Mechaye metim berachamim rabim, Tomek noflim verofei cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Lishnei afar, Michamocha bal gevurot, Umido melach, Melech memit umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah lehachayot metim, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechaye hametim. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, Ukdoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. We will continue our Amidah in silence, coming back together for Oseh Shalom. maybe not yet. והגיון ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי, אדוני צורי, וגואלי, עושה שלום שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, אמן. עושה שלום שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. ועל כל ישראל, amen. At this time, as we prepare for Seder Kriyat HaTorah, for our Torah service, which is on page 268, I will hand you over to Rabbi Hannah, who has just come in from our sukkah, from leading our kolot service. And as she ascends to the bima, I invite you all to turn to page 268 for V'ha'er Einenu.
Shalom, everyone, and sorry for that very short delay as we handed over. I have been outside leading our first hybrid service, our kolot service, in the sukkah, where we had some people join us in person and some people join us online. And it is now such a joy to be with you in here. V'ha'er einenu b'toratecha, v'dabek libeinu b'mitzvotecha, v'yached levavenu li'ahava u'l'yira et shemecha, v'ha'er einenu b'toratecha, v'dabek libeinu b'mitzvotecha, v'yached levavenu li'ahava u'l'yira et shemecha, shelo nevosh v'lo nikalem v'lo nikashel le'olam va'ed. Ha'er einenu b'toratecha, v'dabek libeinu b'mitzvotecha, v'yached levavenu li'ahava u'l'yira et shemecha. And it is my honor to call up Danielle this morning as she blesses Torah for us, saying, Ta'amot, Ta'amot, Daniela bat David Verut, Aliyah Rishonah.
Baruch et Adonai Hamavora.
Baruch Adonai Hamavorach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayidaber Adonai El Moshe ve'el Aharon lemo aleihem. Dabru el bnei Yisrael lemo zot hachaya asher tochlu mikol habehema asher al haaretz kol mafraset parsa v'shosat shesa parasot ma'alat gera behema oto tachlu achetzel lo tochlu mima'alei hagera umimafresei haparsa et hagamal ki ma'alei gera ufarsa einenu mafris tamehu lachem ve'et hashafan ki ma'alei gera ufarsa lo yafris tamehu lachem ve'et ha'arnevet ki ma'alat gerahi ufarsa lo hifrisa tamea hilachem ve'et ha'chazir mafris parsa v'shosa shesa parsa v'hu gera lo yager tamehu lachem mi basaram lo tochelu uvnivlatam lo tika'u tameim hem lachem et zeh tochelu mikol asher b'mayim kol asher lor senapir v'kaskaset b'mayim b'yamim uvanchalim otam tochelu v'chol asher ino senapir v'kaskaset b'yamim uvanchalim mikol sharet hamayim umikol nefesh hachaya asher b'mayim sheket hem lachem v'sheket hiu lachem mi basaram lo tochelu ve'et nivlatam tishaketsu kol asher ein lo senapir v'kaskaset b'mayim sheket hu lachem.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat amet, v'chayei olam nata batochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. And I invite Joe Cohen to read our Haftarah and introduce our Haftarah for us this morning.
This morning's Haftarah is taken from the book of Daniel, chapter 1, verses 1 to 16. The events in this morning's Haftarah took place in the 3rd year of the reign of King Jehoiakim, who was the king of the southern kingdom of Judah, That was the year 605 BCE, when the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar laid siege to Jerusalem, some years before the final destruction of King Solomon's temple. Nebuchadnezzar took some temple vessels and some of the top echelons of Israelite society back to Babylon as captives, including the youthful Daniel, he later of the lion's den, and 3 of his friends. The 4 youngsters were talented and were assigned to be trained to serve in the royal palace in Babylon. Daniel was not too happy about being taken captive, nor about the prospect of eating the unkosher food to be provided by the king. So Daniel adopted a strategy to avoid this. He told the king's chief officer that the meat, fish, and wine to be provided by the king was not as healthy as legumes, probably beans, other vegetables, chickpeas, and lentils, and water. Daniel cleverly suggested that the officer should carry out an experiment by feeding legumes to the 4 boys for 10 days. The experiment worked. At the end of the 10 days, the 4 youths looked fit and well, which convinced the officer to carry on feeding them kosher food. Daniel and his friends were certainly aware of this morning's Torah portion, which deals with the food that we can and can't eat. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bacha banu b'nevi'im tovim, v'ratza b'divreihem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai haboche b'Torah, u'v'moshiach avdo, u'v'Yisrael amo, u'v'nevi'eh ha'emet v'tzedek. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Jehoiakim of Judah, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon came to Jerusalem and laid siege to it. The Eternal delivered King Jehoiakim of Judah into his power, together with some of the vessels of the house of God. And he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God. He deposited the vessels in the treasury of his God. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, his chief officer, to bring some Israelites of royal descent and of the nobility, youths without blemish, handsome, proficient in all wisdom, knowledgeable and intelligent, and capable of serving in the royal palace, and teach them the writings and the language of the Chaldeans. The king allotted daily rations to them from the king's food and from the wine he drank. They were to be educated for 3 years, at the end of which they were to enter the king's service. Among them were the Judahites, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The chief officer gave them new names. He named Daniel Belshazzar, Hananiah Shadrach, Mishael Meshach, and Azariah Abednego. Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the king's food or the wine he drank. So he sought permission of the chief officer not to defile himself. And God had disposed of the chief officer to be kind and compassionate toward Daniel. The chief officer said to Daniel, I fear that my lord the king, who allotted food and drink to you, will notice that you look out of sorts, unlike the other youths of your age, and you will put my life in jeopardy with the king. Daniel replied to the God, whom the chief officer had put in charge of Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days, giving us legumes to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the youth who eat the king's food, and do with your servants as you see fit. He agreed to this plan of theirs and tested them for 10 days. When the 10 days were over, they looked better and healthier than all the youths who were eating of the king's food. So the God kept on removing their food and wine and they were supposed to drink, and gave them legumes. Al ha-Torah va'al ha'avodah va'al ha'nevi'im va'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך. יתברך שמך בפי כל חי, תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השבת.
Amen. Thank you, Joe, for your insights and for your beautiful reading of Haftarah this morning. We are going to turn to page 246 to our prayers for the community. Every week in our Siddur, we have a prayer for our royal family. And this week we come to that prayer thinking of Prince Philip. Regardless of our own personal opinions about the royal family and about Prince Philip's background, Prince Philip did incredible work for so many people. He touched the lives of many in his charitable work and in his help with organizations. And so it is with a touch of sadness that we come to these prayers for the community and our prayers for the royal family. And we wish, of course, the royal family strength in this time. Our God, whose dominion is everlasting, we ask you to bless our sovereign lady, Queen Elizabeth, and to guide the government of this country. Help us to be good citizens, working together for justice and peace at home and abroad. Bless this holy community and all holy communities, and support the life and work for all who labor for their welfare. Our God and God of our ancestors, we ask your blessing on the state of Israel and all who live there. Give wisdom and understanding to its leaders, and friendship and compassion to the people, so that there may be a lasting peace on its borders and in its homes. Soon may your promise be fulfilled. Ki mitzion teitzei Torah, udava Adonai mirushalayim. We ask you to listen to our prayers and look on us kindly, supporting those who are troubled, consoling the bereaved, sending relief to those in pain or anxiety. We take a moment to think of those in our community who need our prayers for healing at this time. God, may it please you to send healing to those who are in pain or anxiety, be their refuge through their time of trial. Make them secure in the knowledge that they will never be forgotten by you, nor by us, their community. As you blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and our mothers, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless our own congregation, all other congregations gathered in prayer, and everyone who responds to the needs of the community. May such be the divine will, and let us say Amen. And we are on the 28th of Nisan, which means the month of Iyar is just around the corner. So we turn to page 250 to our prayer for the new moon and blessing that new moon that's going to come on Monday night or Tuesday. Yehi ratzon milfanecha Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu, she'tchadesh aleinu et hachodesh hazeh l'tova u'livracha. Our God and God of our ancestors, may it be your will that the new moon come to us for goodness and blessing. May the new month bring us a life of fulfillment and peace, a life of goodness and blessing, a life of sustenance and most importantly of health, a life filled with awe of God and fear of sin, a life without self-reproach and shame, a life of wealth and honor, a life marked by love of your teaching and awe of God, when the desires of our hearts may be fulfilled for good. And let us say Amen. Rosh Chodesh Iyar Yihiyeh b'Yom Sheni. The new moon of Iyar will be on Monday night. Haba aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael l'tova. May it come to us and to all Israel for good. Yehad Shehu HaKodesh Baruch Hu, aleinu ve'al kol amo beit Yisrael l'chayim u'l'shalom, l'sason u'l'simcha, l'shua u'l'nechama, v'nomar, Amen. We turn to conclude our Torah service midway down page 256 with the words of Eitz Chaim Hi. Eitz Chaim Hi, lama chazikim ba, v'tomecheha me'u Adonai elecha v'nashuva Chadish Yameinu Chadish Yameinu Chadish Yameinu K'kedem. Over the past week, our news has been filled with stories about blood. Following 79 reports of blood clots after the first dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency has said those aged 18 to 29 in the UK will be offered an alternate vaccine. At the same time as this hitting our news, our Jewish ritual lives have also been concerned with blood. We have just finished reading the story of Pesach, where blood plays a great symbolic importance. As the rivers turn to blood and the Egyptians face a lack of accessible fresh water, we are taught of blood's power to kill. Later in the narrative, as the blood of sacrifice is painted on the doors of the Israelites, we are taught of blood's power to save. Blood becomes our life force. As a consequence, the laws of kashrut, which we begin to read this week, forbid us from consuming the blood of any animals, for the life of that animal is in the blood. Kashrut encourages us to think about how we consume animal products, including the ruling about the ingestion of blood. When the eating of meat was originally only as part of ritual sacrifice, following the slaughter of an animal in the temple, we need the laws of kashrut to help us consider how we eat meat in a way that is thoughtful and considered. The renowned anthropologist Dame Mary Douglas, in her book Leviticus as Literature, observes that through the act of kashrut, the body of the worshipper is made analogous to the sanctuary. Anything that will render the altar impure will render the body of the worshipper impure also. Using this approach, all fruits, vegetables, seeds, and grains are pure, but meat needs to be of the same species to which the Israelites had access. And as it is no longer sacrificed as part of temple ritual, it needs to become a food made ritually specific in a different way. As we continue to explore the rules of kashrut next week, we are told that when slaughtering an animal, we must spill out its blood and cover it in dust. Shechita, the ritual slaughter of animals, has become the process of bloodletting, equivalent to the sacrificing of animals in the temple. Just as the temple ritual included the scattering of blood onto the floor of the altar, an animal killed by shechita releases blood onto the floor to spill out and be covered in dust, as we read in Leviticus. Our recreation of the temple ritual is not just done through our ritualized slaughtering of animals, but is also enacted on the bodies of our young. As Mary Douglas argues, both the body and the altar are places where God is encountered. Through keeping kashrut, we encounter God through the food that sustains our bodies. Through circumcising our sons, we encounter God through enactment of the covenant. The earliest guides on circumcision are found in the Kalalei Hamilah, the 13th century work by Rabbi Jacob Hagozer. Here, the ritual itself preserves the ancient notion that the deity desires the sacrifice of the whole child, but is appeased by the offering of a portion. Circumcision, therefore, is not about the removal of the foreskin, but about the act of ritual sacrifice and shedding of blood. Traditionally, the words from Ezekiel are offered at the ritual of circumcision. When I passed by you and saw you wallowing in your blood, I said to you, live in spite of your blood. I said to you, live in spite of your blood. The repetition in this verse is examined in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. Here, the act of circumcision is likened to the sacrifice of the Paschal lamb. We read, by the merit of the blood of the covenant of circumcision and the blood of the Paschal lamb, you shall be redeemed from Egypt. And by the merit of the covenant of circumcision and by the merit of the Passover, in the future you shall be redeemed at the end of the fourth kingdom. In the ritual of circumcision, just as in the ritual of temple sacrifice and of modern-day shechita, blood is scattered. These moments of bloodshed, made important by the rituals overlaying them, are community-forming moments, demarcations of our peoplehood. Our ritualistic bloodletting brings us closer to the ways of our ancestors. It enables us to make even the most mundane activities holy. It helps us to maintain our distinctness as a culture and a religion, so that we can preserve the continuity from the Judaism of the past. The idea of blood as our life force is one that permeates our tradition and our psyche. It binds us together in such a powerful way that the punishment for consuming blood is karet, being cut off from your community. Blood ties us together. It dictates the foods we eat. It physically marks our young. It is able to sustain us, to clot and heal our wounds. This is why the threat of our blood not working as it should can feel so terrifying. We read every morning, blessed are you, our living God, who formed human beings in wisdom, creating within them openings and vessels. This blessing makes us intricately aware of the danger that we face were one of our openings not to open as they should, for it would be impossible to remain alive and stand before you. So as many of us are called for our second vaccine, or as some of us embark on our first, how do we deal with the news that has filled us with concern about the properties of our blood? Blood clots have the potential to kill. But when thinking about the COVID vaccine, I am not worried about physical blood clots and the effect on our bodies. Rather, I believe the power of these blood clots is in the mind. Dr. June Rain, the chief executive of the MHRA, stated that the risk of this type of rare blood clot is about 4 people in 1 million who receive the vaccine. When this is compared to the risk of 1 in 1,000 for those in pregnancy, of 1 in 2,000 for those taking the contraceptive pill, or of 1 in 5,000 for those going on flights lasting over 4 hours, the risk is small. Yet, the threat of blood clots stopping our successful vaccination program in its tracks is truly threatening to the health and well-being of thousands. If we do not vaccinate ourselves, we are not just putting our own lives at risk, but also the lives of our community. And we also live at risk of being karet, cut off from those we love, unable to return to normality due to the potential implementation of vaccination passports. We have a duty to one another and to ourselves to protect our life force and to protect that of others. May we accept our vaccine graciously, knowing the communal benefits outweigh the risks. May we listen to our bodies, tuning into their needs and marveling at their ability to withstand so much. And may we see the vaccine as a beacon of hope, one that brings us together and performs such wonders. Baruch atah Adonai, rofeh kol basar, umafli la'asot. Amen. We turn together to page 310 and prepare to conclude our service with the words of the Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon ha'kol, la'tet gedula li'otzeh bereshit, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shehu notei shemayim ve'yosed haaretz, u'moshav yikaro b'shamayim mimahal, u'shchinatu zo, be'gofei meromim, Hu Eloheinu einod, emet malkeinu v'fesilato, kagativ betorato, v'yadata hayom v'hashavota el levavecha, ki Adonai hu ha'Elohim, b'shamayim imol, v'al haaretz mitachat einod. And on page 313, Al kein nekavelecha Adonai Eloheinu, lirot mehera b'tiferet uzecha, laha'aveh gilulim min haaretz, v'ha'elilim karot yekaretin, litaken olam b'malchut shaddai, v'chol b'nei vasa yikru v'shmecha, lahafnot elecha kol rishei aretz, yakiru v'yedu kol yoshvei tevel, ki shutafim kulanu b'tikun olamecha, ki ha'malchut shalcha hi, u'la'ol me'ad timloch b'chavod, kakatuv b'toratecha, Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed. V'nemar v'haya Adonai le'melech al kol ha'aretz, bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. Our community is built on a foundation of mutual care. We have been together for the past 12 months, sharing in one another's joy and being there to comfort those who come to Shabbat in mourning. On this Shabbat, we regret to announce the death of Bruce Cohen, husband of Louise, father of Claire, Andrew, Stephen, Nicola, and Emily, and brother-in-law of Colette Levy. We also think of all those in the Shloshim and the Shana, the periods of time since the death of a loved one, and of all those who died at this time in years past. As a community on this Shabbat, we remember especially Percival Adams, Ruhola Aframian, Sam Cohen, Sonia Demiak, Abraham Elks, Stephen Farkas, Morris Feldman, Liesel Franken, Adelaide Gold, Leslie Goldwyn, Susan Holter, Elizabeth Israel, Leon Isero, Alfred Levi, Sissy Lewis, Esther Linden, Harry Linford, Rita Mendoza, Francine Morris, Rietia Alterton, Louis Poole, Ralph Pope, Lawrence Pizer, Max Rinkoff, Sylvie Schreier, Michael Sendak, Rena Smith, Vini Stein, Rudy Tier, and Camillo Weiss. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be a source of enduring blessing. We invite all those who come to this Shabbat in mourning to join with me in leading your community in the words of the Kaddish on page 316. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabbah, v'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayachon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chayei dichol beit Yisrael, ba'agalau u'vizman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehi shemei rabbah mevarach leolam u'lamei almaya, yit barach v'yishtabach, v'yit pa'ar v'yit roman v'yit naseh, v'yit hada v'yit haleh v'yit halal, shemei di kudesha berichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, diamiran ba'alma v'imru, amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol ha'olam v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol ha'olam. Thank you for being with us this morning. It's been a joy to see you on our screens. We have a full week ahead of us, including Yom Ha'atzmaut on Wednesday evening, a joint event with the Liberal and Reform movements together. Please do check out our weekly email and website for details of how to join that. Next week, we will be back with a in-person service again in our sukkah for Big Bang this week. So if you do fancy coming along to Big Bang, please also sign up for that. And we also have a special shiur on Saturday morning. So for details of all of that, please look in our weekly email. We are going to conclude our service this morning on page 320 with the words of Adon Olam. And I invite you to go and get your Kiddush ready so that we can make Kiddush together at the end. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yatzir nivra li'et nasa kachef sokol azai melech shemo nikra v'yacharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora v'hu haya v'hu hoveh v'hu yeh b'tifara v'hu echad v'ein sheni להמשיל לו, להכבירה, בלי ראשית, בלי תכלית, ולא העוז והמזרח, והוא אלי, וחי גואלי, וצחף לי ביום צרה, והוא bayom ekra bayado afkid ruchi ba'edi shan ba'ira ba'im ruchi gaviati Adonai li velo ira. And as I run quickly to get the Kiddush cup, we prepare to make Kiddush together. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לזורתם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ וביום השביעי שבת וינפש Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. L'chaim, Shabbat Shalom from us in the Beit Tefillah. May you have a peaceful and a restful Shabbat. We'll unmute you now so you can wish one another Shabbat Shalom.
Oops. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
Shabbos, everybody.
Shabbos, everyone.
Shabbos, Gideon.
Congratulations.
Shabbos.
Shabbat
Shabbos, Aubrey. Shabbos, to the Cohens.
Shabbos, Paul.
Ellen, Shabbat Shalom.
Lovely to see everybody. And Maureen, nice to see you.
Shabbos.
And Ellen, love your kippah, Ellen.
Yeah. That's a really good keeper, Ellen. Very good.
That's right.
All for you. Shabbat Shalom.
Good Shabbos.
Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos,
Shabbat
everyone.
Fashion nice
Shabbat
stuff.
Shalom.
Bye, everyone.
Time, everybody.
Shabbat
Keep well,
Shalom.
keep safe.
Shabbat Shalom.
Okay,
Bye-bye,
we'll go on the other one.